guys, 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. If you could all please rise and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the October 16th meeting minutes, please. By Retta, seconded by Heather. Any errors, omissions, otherwise? MC?
I was handed a question regarding Glen Lake full-day kindergarten discussion on page 3. Sentence reads, Goffstown has increased enrollment and a new kindergarten teacher is included in this budget. Is that inaccurate?
No, that's not accurate.
So we'll strike that.
Hang on. And I would just say the second sentence, Bran explained, I'm assuming that's Brian. Although our fiber is important.
Could have said brain.
Oh,
I've
that
seen
wouldn't be
that.
the first time I've been called Brain. I would just strike that entire sentence. I don't know where that came from, but that's not true.
All right, so Denise, you'll strike that
Yep.
sentence. Anything else on those minutes?
Good catch, MC.
I actually didn't. Kate did.
Anything else? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Okay.
Opposed, abstaining? We're unanimous, thank you. Entertain a motion for the approval of the 10:23 meeting minutes, please.
I'll make a motion.
Heather, seconded by Retta. Anything there?
And this is.
Seeing none, all in favor of approving the
Wait a minute,
minutes as
wait,
oh, did you not read the minutes, Dan?
I did. I'm just looking to find, because I didn't highlight it in yellow. There's one of the minutes where it was supposed to be 17-5 in 12-5, and it came out 16 in the minutes. Is this the one? Hang on, I'm looking for it. There it is.
Is it these?
Entertain coupling. I read it. This is, oh, here it is. It's, Dan Cloutier motioned the following reductions. AP testing for 16K and eliminate 12.5 for GSS reading. That was supposed to be 17.5, because remember, we were balancing the 30 and the 30?
Mm-hmm.
That would be on the last page, about 4 or 5 paragraphs up.
Got 'em? Perfect. Anything else? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended.
And
We're unanimous, thank you. And then I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the 10:30 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion.
By Heather, do I have a second? By Ginny. Did anybody see anything there?
I did.
What do you got?
Second paragraph, 1.5 million, should be just 1 M, not 2.
A little sniggler.
that's millimeters.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes as amended?
Okay.
Opposed? Abstaining? You're abstaining, Janelle. Christie and Janelle abstain. Other than that, we're good. And then lastly, I'll entertain a motion for the November 2nd school board meeting minutes.
So moved.
By Dan, seconded by Ginny. Anybody see anything there? That was a pretty quick one. You good?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, all in favor of approving those minutes as presented?
Aye.
We're unanimous. Abstaining, except for Retta who's abstaining. Okay. Correspondence folder tonight?
Just a few things this evening. We cut out an obituary for Gene Ross. I'm not sure if some board members may remember Gene Ross passed away just recently. He was a former superintendent. He was 82 years old. A few things from some of the schools. Mountain View did a great fundraiser to help support our local fireman, Matt Beachard. They did Orange Out Day, so instead of wearing costumes on Halloween, they wore orange and black, and they raised $725 that went to our local firemen. The posting for the annual turkey trot for Bartlett, and Mountain View also had an author come and spoke about the book Rules by Cynthia Lord, so Cynthia was there. So just a few things to share.
All right, thank you. Commendations, good news. Got anything, Kathy? All right, come on, we gotta have something. Go ahead, Jenny.
There was a very exciting football game, and the proceeds are going on to championship game again.
Mhm.
Also, there was a very exciting, and that they went to the semifinal soccer
Yeah.
game this year, which was awesome.
Mhm.
Our soccer team is definitely exciting to see.
So football plays this Saturday against Winnicott, and then whoever wins goes on to the full championship, which will be at UNH, Steve? So it's us versus Winnicott, and then Salem versus Pinkerton will be the other quarterfinal game, so those two winners will go on.
Great. And if I understand correctly, MVMS girls field hockey won the championship just recently, so props to them. Go ahead, MC.
Tomorrow is the last class for the master's cohort. They are finally finished after a 2-year process. And they will be participating in a hooding ceremony to get their diplomas in December. So I think that, Kathy, if you want to speak on behalf of the group, I think that everyone has been just so grateful for the experience.
Yeah, it really was. It was a good 2 years. It was busy, it was long, but we learned a lot. And I think we all feel like it was, thank you very much for supporting us in this endeavor, because I think it was good for all of us. And we are very much looking forward to December 12th. Although maybe tomorrow night at 7:30 even more to be done.
We'll be looking to encourage the creation of another cohort after they finish. So this was a great way to bring professional development on site to our teachers. And the cost is really pretty remarkable what Southern New Hampshire University was able to work with us and to partner to have that professional development was a pretty great model.
Mhm.
We've been very impressed.
Great. Thanks, guys. Anything else? Seeing none, I will open the floor to public comment. Do I have public comment tonight? Okay. So you've been here before, so you remember, state your name, your address for the record. Okay. And just limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Kelly Taylor. I live at 48 Peppermint Street in Goffstown. I'm the vice president of the Goffstown Grizzly Lacrosse Club. These are some executive board members as well. We just wanted to, again, thank you for considering paying the salaries for the Mountain View Middle School coaches. That's about $5,000 a year that the club pays, and if we don't have to pay that, then that's like over 100 families that get a little discount on our registration fees every year. We just want to let you know we support the school board and hope you'll be able to keep our request in the budget, or make sure it's in the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close out public comment. We'll move on to our standing committee reports, policy review.
No report from policy review tonight, other than we're meeting next Monday, 5:30 at the SAU.
Okay. PNC?
No other reports for PNC, other than at our next meeting in December, we'll be selecting the Cornerstone and Dreamkeeper Awards, so we look forward to seeing nominations.
All right, thank you. CNE?
No report from senior either. We will be meeting on the 13th, 7 at the SAU.
Okay, thank you. Budget Committee, we do have a short report. We did meet last Thursday. We've got some preliminary presentations from town. You guys may recall that we were scheduled to present our budget tomorrow on the 7th. They were very kind, given the circumstance that we've been wrestling with lately, to allow us to delay that a week. So we are now scheduled to present to them next Tuesday. In the meantime, we'll resume town presentations on Thursday at 7 at Town Hall. But I am very grateful for their understanding and support in not pushing that for the presentation tomorrow night. A&F.
A&F met this evening at 6:30 and have unanimously recommended we bring to the full board a manifest. So I would like to offer a motion to accept the total manifest in a value of $2,075,161.52.
Got that motion. Do I have a second by Heather? Details, Dan, please?
We have some payroll and payroll expenses, which include taxes, New Hampshire Retirement System, Health Trust, and TSA Consulting of $1,161,000, about 56% of the total manifest. Individual spending, $5,000 and over to a single vendor this period. Birch Tree Center, that's autism services for a student, $8,677. Interim healthcare services for one student, $74.39. Strong Foundations Charter, October services for 5 students, $73.83. Southern New Hampshire Speech and Language, we paid $30,913. That's to go back all the way to summer services for all schools for speech. Spalding Youth Center, $13,714. September services, 3 students. Valley Collaborative, $5,729. September services, 1 student. That's a total of $73,854, 3.6% of the manifest this evening. General expenses. Amazon. We have been buying a lot off Amazon, so we don't see some of the other ones, and that probably means we're getting good pricing. $11,215. School, office supplies, books, those one-off kind of things. Apple Incorporated. We made the Goffstown High School and Mountain View Middle School teacher laptop annual lease payment for the laptops and the components, $121,883. Some PSAT examinations, college entrance, $10,446. The Dirt Doctors, we got some of that mulch for the Maple Playground, if you remember, $16,200. Eversource, our power for all schools, $21,411. First American Equipment Finance, that is the lease payment for the mobile units, the new mobile units at Bartlett and at Maple Ave, $126,349. Foley School Solutions, books and materials, $82.19. Did I say that right? Foley? Foley. French, not French. Goffstown Truck Center, regular and late bus transportation for September, $99,557. O'Sullivan Flooring, $72,000. It's a progress payment for the gym at MVMS. Pelmac Security Systems for the new modulars, $15,231. Performance Food Group, $97.22. Food supplies. RPF Mechanical for electrical and mechanical services for October, Goffstown High School, Mountain View Middle School, and Bartlett, $63.99. SAU 19 to keep those people paid and whatever else they do, $153,680. School specialty, classroom supplies, $75.96. And $20,000 to Wally Computer Associates for computer equipment. These are boards and projectors. Total of $706,719, 34.1% of the total, for $1,941,921, which is about 93.7% of those 5,000 and above plus payroll.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on these? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the manifest as presented?
Aye.
We're unanimous, thank you. Anything else from A&F tonight?
Not from the A&F perspective, that is not elsewhere on an agenda.
Okay, thanks. Superintendent's report?
Just a few things to share this evening. I did email the board last week, but wanted to publicly, excuse me, recognize and share the passing of Betsy Lake, who is one of our high school special education teachers. Betsy was just a great woman and was with us for a long time. And very, very sad. She had a courageous battle with cancer, and just a sad loss. Last week, we had some bad weather. We did a 2-hour delay after the wind event, and something that I wanted to share that was different than what we had done in the past. The evening before, all of the principals, directors, Goffstown Police and Fire, New Boston Police and Fire, Department of Public Works, the Truck Center, New Boston Highway Department, we all did a conference call. And it was a chance for us, there's a new platform that we were able to all be on the phone together, and we talked about what we were anticipating from weather. We debriefed as a team. It was just a nice way to pull all the principals and the directors in when we're looking at some of our emergency responses. So that was something new that we tried that evening. And I think the storm took a lot of people by surprise. I don't think folks really understood how intense the winds were projected to be. We were looking at it anticipating 60+ mile-an-hour winds, and in fact, that's what we got. Mr. Geroliman has been working on, I've briefed the board on the public school infrastructure grants. These are monies that are available, and to date, only one school district has had any money approved, and that was the New Boston School District, that Gary was the first one to be able to get in a project. He was the very first project submitted and got money approved for New Boston for their dark fiber bid. But I did want to let the Goffstown board know that at this point we have a number of projects that we will be submitting for, and it might be helpful if I could just run down these, and if we have concurrence from the Goffstown board, that we could include the minutes with our submission. So if I may, Diane, just real quick, a few things. Gary's looking for grant money to manage our video security system. He'd like to move forward with a server model instead of individual DVR models. This will allow us to have better compatibility and allow for new high-def cameras. We're looking at making enhancements to our alarm and emergency notification systems, and to have additional blue lights installed. These are the lights that we have for our panic systems. We're looking at interior locks for classroom for doors that haven't been upgraded. We're looking for replacement radios or walkie-talkies, and we're looking to submit, the board has heard me talk about the driveway project at Mountain View, where we're looking to expand the drive, and we're also looking to add a bus turnaround to the back of the property so that buses will be able to pick up the student, turn around, and go back down the same way, so that we have removed buses from the queue of parent and staff cars. So just real quick, I wanted to include that. Gary's here to be able to answer any questions that board members may have.
Go ahead, Dan.
I have one for the video system, taking off the DVRs and throwing it onto a server model. Will that then give you the opportunity, for a lack of a better word, having an app on, let's say, Brian's desk that he can log into and take a peek when something's happening, or view with a secure wrapper around that?
Absolutely. And right now we've got 11 DVRs district-wide. It's unmanageable. They don't talk to each other. It's all.
Yeah. Would it be appropriate to have them on a mic so that people can hear?
Definitely. Do you want to come to the
Please.
table? That's great.
It's interesting. I thought the general public would love to hear what you have to say.
Gary Geroliman, Director of Technology. Yeah, the security system needs upgrading. It's a very old system. It's all analog cameras with coax instead of on the network. There's 11 DVRs district-wide. Both Mountain View and Goffstown High School have three totally separate DVRs that aren't intermeshed at all. This new system will be one centrally located system. We'll have all the cameras on it for the entire district. We'll be able to put IP cameras on it, much higher quality than what we have right now. Right now, with the standard definition cameras, sometimes hard to identify, a face, who it might be. This is going to be a totally upgraded system. It's going to make, I think, things much more secure, and I think that's the focus.
Super, and we have, follow-up? We have the bandwidth with the new dark fiber that
Yeah,
we put
exactly.
on, and the
That-
bandwidth and the internal.
That was part of, that was what really makes this possible, the dark fiber network between all of our buildings. There's no restriction in the bandwidth now.
Super. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else have any other questions?
I
Go
thought
ahead,
we
Jen.
had finished with our interior locking. Do all of our doors not, are we not able to lock from the inside on all of our doors?
This is a sort of a long, complicated story. It's not just the hallway doors, it's the interior classroom doors. So we've had a long, detailed conversation with the police and fire departments in Goffstown and New Boston, and we have not been able to reconcile that. Police and fire want different locking mechanisms because they're looking at this from two different avenues. One being compliance with the fire safety code, and the other being the need for security during a lockdown situation. So in fact, Randy, Gary, and I have been part of this. Ray's been part of this. The building principals have been part of this. So we have not done all the doors, no. That's what he's putting in for, but we still have to contend with all the side doors because they don't have the locking mechanisms yet as well.
Anything else? Any other questions for Gary? No? Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Two more quick things if I can, Diane. I just wanted to confirm that we're looking for an SAU meeting date. We have either December 12th or December 13th. The New Boston School Board was pretty open on both of those days. The meeting will be held at New Boston at 7 p.m. So we're looking for people's availability. If you could please let Mrs. Moran know, and she'd like to finalize that date and get the date published and out to everybody. And then my last piece, Diane, and I'm not sure if you want to do this evening or if you'd like to put this off, but we did have a pretty long conversation at one of the last New Boston School Board meetings, and I have input to share with them regarding the calendar. So I can do that this evening. I've got a list that I can run through of their input, or if you'd like to put this off.
No, go ahead. I just want to confirm either Tuesday the 12th or Wednesday the 13th as the potential dates.
Yes.
Okay.
I go for the 13th.
Okay.
That would be my preference.
Tuesday the 12th, Budget Committee, we'd be taking up school, so I would say that the 13th would also be more appropriate for,
Maybe they'll be done by then.
right? Always be hopeful. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. So input from New Boston on the school calendar for next year. On Election Day, either the primary day or the voting day in March, New Boston was interested in exploring the possibility of having school on one or both of those days. We did talk about the logistical struggles around having school, particularly at Bartlett. That is a major struggle with Bartlett being a polling place. But if there was a way that we could figure it out, such as a school-wide field trip or something of that nature, that New Boston was in support of those 2 days. There was, I would say New Boston was indifferent on having school on Columbus Day. I think there were some folks who supported and some who really didn't have an opinion. They were in support of being in school on Martin Luther King Day, with the focus being teaching and learning focused around Dr. King and civil rights. They were split 50-50 on a after Labor Day start, and Wendy Lambert, the board chair, had received input from the teachers that I think we had shared with all of you at the last SAU board meeting. New Boston is interested in creating a color-coded calendar that has very clear ending dates and when the last day of school is, so when families are making plans for camps and the like. Conval has a calendar that people have liked, and it's color-coded, so we're looking to probably emulate something like that. They were not in support of blizzard bags. They absolutely want to stay on the same calendar sequence. They don't want any deviation between New Boston and Goffstown. We recognize how hard that is for families that have kids both at New Boston Central School as well as Mountain View and the high school. And they, in general, support an hours-based calendar, particularly if we put in for an hours-based calendar and then had some flexibility built into it. Because Mrs. Lambert is here, as a coincidence would have it, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I'm sure Wendy would be happy to answer any questions, or if I can answer any questions. I had offered to give input back and forth between the two boards, so I think maybe if we could put the snow day discussion on our next meeting, so I could bring some responses and we could have some dialogue around these particular items, I think that would be helpful.
I think we'll plan on that for our next one.
Super.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
When
Doug.
we talked about the color coding, did we put like the last day of school as June 28th? And if we say, if we don't have 9 days of snow, then it's the 27th, and if we don't have 8 days of snow, you see what I'm saying? And we go
Yeah,
backwards,
we
rather
actually
than
talked
forward, but
about-
backwards?
Right, instead of having, yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about it at the SAU board meeting as well.
Oh, for an hour and 40 minutes, I think we talked about it.
I think you might
Yeah.
be correct, so, yes. Wendy, did you have anything? Would you like to come to the table and have anything to add? Okay, thank you. Anything else, Brian?
That was all I have this evening, thank you.
All right, so that wraps up the superintendent's report. And up next on the agenda, you're looking at our second read policies, but we had agreed to scratch those in favor of moving along to what is coming up as far as our budget discussion, seeing as how we really need to finalize our budget. So Stephen very graciously agreed to postpone until our next meeting. So this will bring us to our field trip requests.
We have two this evening. We have Goffstown High School Student Council. Every year, they attend a New Hampshire School Council Association meeting at Waterville Valley. This year will be held on November 9th and 10th. And our two co-advisors for Student Council will be bringing a group up as they have every year for a long time. So we would be bringing that request.
Okay, but that is for notification. This is a repeat request.
It is repeat and it is overnight.
Overnight. So if you would prefer them not to go, that would be when you would make a motion. Otherwise,
That's like in 3 days, right? Thursday and Friday this week?
it's this week. So
Not too late.
no time like the present. Seeing no motion, tell them have a good time.
Thank you.
Behave and be safe.
Our
Go
next
ahead.
one is, this is a new field trip. Team 8-1 at Mountain View is looking to go to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute, and this, I actually read through, was pretty cool. There's a Senate immersion module where the kids are exposed to a full-scale reproduction of the U.S. Senate chambers. They can experience hands-on learning. They get workshops and the like on the legislative process. It looks pretty neat. And they're looking to go in April of 2018 with about 80 students attending and 6 chaperones, and there will be an administrator because it's out of state.
All right, this is a first-time trip and therefore it does
First-time
need our
trip.
approval. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Dan.
Is this actually in Boston or surrounding area?
It is,
Says Boston.
Janelle knows?
It says Boston.
I know it says
Oh.
Boston. And the question is, because Boston, you can talk about
Boston.
Braintree, you can talk about,
it's the Edward
Waltham.
M. Kennedy Institute.
right,
And I'm not sure exactly where that's located. Wendy?
okay.
I believe it is in Boston, yes.
So they have some, in which class?
Oh, here it is. Columbia Point, Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. In which class?
This is for a social studies trip, but it would be the
Only-
whole day, leaving at
Yeah, but only
8:45.
But only 80 kids,
It's one team.
One team.
just one team?
Yep,
Okay. Sounds really interesting.
it does sound super interesting.
And the grade is the 8th grade? or-
8th grade.
8th grade, yeah. No, that's, sounds really cool.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we allow the trip to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute in Boston, Mass. on April 18th, 2018.
Perfect. Do I have a second? By Stephen. All in favor?
All right.
We're unanimous. Have a great trip.
Thank you.
All right, so this brings us to the board budget work session. I trust that since we met last Thursday, that you've all had some time to continue processing, where we're at and, the direction that you wish to take. I am happy for if you have, anybody wants to
Well,
get
what
us
we-
started, that's terrific.
One of the questions that we had talked about is, because this whole thing we're talking about tax rate, if we're gonna talk about all of this, is the progression of what's happening, and everything is still somewhat fluid for this year. But that doesn't necessarily, and it does not impact the way the budget goes forward, but it affects the entire tune of what the package looks like, believe it or not, in 3 years, in 2019, not necessarily even 2018. Because the full impact won't be seen until 2019, because that's the impact of the 2018-19, or the 2019-20 budget, which comes after the budget we're doing right now. Not to make it too convoluted for everybody who's listening. So we're looking, one of the questions we have is, what do we have that's available for our encumbrances of the projects that we did authorize? Because we authorize a certain amount, and we spend a certain amount, and so there's some that can get liquidated. And, I don't know if we're prepared to talk about that tonight or some other time. I mean, if we are, we can talk about that, because from what I understand, we probably have a few $100,000 there that can be used, or some substantial money that could be used to offset it, or there are projects that we have already approved going forward with. If we want to change our minds, so to speak, it may not be too late, and then we could not do them, which would release the funds and put it back in for available tax relief in 2018.
Okay, and what I think we have here is a case of two different conversations before us. One is, how are we going to address the tax rate differential of the projected tax rate this year? And one is, what is going to be in the budget that we move forward to the budget committee and then the voters in March? They're interrelated and they're definitely connected.
Yep.
But they are different, they're slightly
Agreed.
different conversations. We have to have them both. So that's fine. I
Okay.
just wanna make sure, for clarity and for direction as far as where we are, that we recognize that what I'm hearing from you right now is how we're going to address the differential, the 83-cent differential between our proposed tax rate and the actual. Have I understood what you're saying correctly?
It's based on next year's budget and the following year's budget and the current methodology that we deployed for spending. So it's not this year's tax rate at all. Because the 83 cents of this year's
Right.
tax rate, we've already took care of last Thursday.
But what you're talking about is, what haven't we spent yet that can be returned?
But that won't,
What
there's
projects
no
have we
impact there.
started?
Right.
Right, that we could
Yep.
do. But those items are not in this document that's going forward.
Correct,
That
but,
we need to finalize and move forward. And again, it's all gotta be talked about, but I wanna make
right,
sure we're
I
talking about the
believe
same thing.
the answer to those questions impacts my decision on this.
Mhm.
And so, because that's already been done, this is yet to be done, and if we deal with something that's already been done and reverse something there, then we can still go forward with this.
Okay. So let's
That's-
take a few minutes, and so what we're looking right now is, because I think you're right in some degree that what we do is going to impact. I hear what you're saying. For you, it definitely is. So, as we talked about, we had our special meeting last Thursday, requesting of the Board of Selectmen to request of the DRA a hearing. And the intent of that hearing, we hope, if it were to go our way, it could result in a 39 cents reduction. So where our differential is 83 cents, we'd shave 39 cents off that. So get it a little bit closer to the projected tax rate that we were talking about back in December and then in February and in March. So we have that hearing on Thursday. We're waiting to know what the outcome is. But in the meantime, we need to address, are we going to do anything else? What else are we going to do?
So from my perspective, it's a done deal, whether it happens this tax rate setting or next year. We've already taken care of that, so the delta in my mind is no longer 83 cents.
Mhm.
It's that the other 38, 39 cent, we've already voted and likely gonna continue that vote. See how I worded that thing? It was dependent on the DRA, whether or not it actually goes against the tax rate this year. So if the DRA says no, it goes back in the 2.5% funding. We would have to motion again next year to put it against the tax rate. But in my mind, the money's set aside, we can do that. So I'm looking at the 45, 46 cents. And 45, 46 cents at 6.81 cents per 100,000. So if you do some quick math, that's what, about 7.5? So that's about $750,000 that we're talking. So if we say somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000, that brings it back to even. And do we have $700,000 and $800,000 in unspent projects? Or can we also go forward with the current 18-19 budget and bring down the expected tax rate right now, which was $183,000 over default? And if we drop that to 158, then that would be another probably 9 to 10 cents on the tax rate there to bring that.
Okay, let's back up, because Brian, I did ask you to come tonight prepared to speak to different projects that we had encumbered funds for, but that had not yet been started.
Sure.
In the event that this list would inform any decision, is this something that the board wants to hear? We'll see consensus, okay?
Okay. So, Ray, did you include this on your handout?
No, I shared that handout with the ANF.
With ANF, okay.
Okay.
So the projects that we had approved, and these monies were from FY17, so this was last year's money. Projects that we still have available in the queue. We had $80,000 in covered walkways. That was primarily for the Bartlett project. $32,000 for cafeteria table replacement at Bartlett. That's a CIP item. $42,000 of replacement for cafeteria tables at Maple Ave. $10,000 for dugouts at Mountain View. $10,000 for scoreboards at Mountain View. $5,000 for weight room enhancements here at the high school. $75,000 for door replacements here at the high school. $70,000 steel building for the theater program down at the end of the building. And $50,000 for custodial equipment. That was replacements of floor scrubbers, burnishers, and the like. We have money available that we did a crack filling and seal coating and restriping project. We didn't finish that project. We did Mountain View, we did Bartlett, and we did Glen Lake. We have to do the high school and Maple Ave still. So we've spent about half of that. So we had $60,000 originally set aside for that project, and I think we've spent $31,595. We also have $36,000 for a new plow truck that the board had authorized. So that would be the monies that would be available. If we don't spend the money on those projects, that money is automatically part of the unreserved fund balance that would be automatically returned to the town for tax relief.
There's another piece of that, so projects that we have completed.
So completed projects.
That we have money available, that's gonna go against.
So for example, we did, and these are ones that are already done, roadway expansion at Maple Ave and redoing the playground. That was about $80,000. Classroom networking for the 4 new modular classrooms, that was $7,000, that's already done. Gym floor at Mountain View, that's already done. So some of these have already been finished, and we wouldn't be able to touch them, but the rest we certainly could. So if it was the board's pleasure to put those projects on hold, that money could be returned for tax relief.
So Brian, big picture, if you add all the unfinished projects up, what does that come up to?
Well, let me give you the most recent add up, because we've gone through this a couple of different times.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had that total down bottom.
It's
Yeah.
about 563, Ray.
Well, I think the total number, and this, Dan, you can chime in here. We have assigned projects that we've reviewed, those that have already been bought and paid for, so to speak. And then we have other projects that have yet to have money spent against them. However, the board did authorize us to proceed. Those are the ones that Brian just reviewed with everybody, and that totals to just over $400,000, okay? Now, the decision point there would be, of those $400,000 worth of projects, does the board wish to revisit any of those and determine whether or not you want to still continue with them, or put spending on hold for a period of time? Of the total commitments or budgets established for all of this extra work, the reserves that we've created for the special projects that Brian has reviewed, and when we put the drainage project in for Goffstown High School, and when we add the modular project for Bartlett and Maple Avenue, we put all of these together. At this current point in time, there's $1,161,000 worth of available funds or unassigned funds. We go ahead with the 400,000 that Brian reviewed. That reduces that $1,161,000 number by $400,000, giving us a balance of just around $750 or so. We're starting to basically come down to a net position now. I'm not sure if that's answering your question or not, as to what's available in the way of fund balance to be treated as a potential tax return at the end of this current school year.
I actually wasn't asking about the fund balance at all, given that it's November, and typically speaking, you're quite reluctant to discuss
No,
fund
that's
balance.
a different fund balance. You're
Okay.
talking about the Fund 10 fund balance, and we're not. We're
Yes.
talking
Yeah.
about the Fund 11 and the Fund 30 fund balance, which are the capital projects and the encumbrances that have come forward from a prior year. This is money that was
Okay.
left over at the end of 2017 for projects.
Right,
And that's so we haven't spent, there's $1,161,000, including the $570,000 in the bank, including the $570,000, that's already been taken out, so that's already in reserve. So from what we talked about in A&F, there's $792,000 roughly of unspent money, which is already reduced, so all the projects we already authorized are already funded from those prior years. There's a balance today to offset a tax rate if we didn't spend any more on the drainage project, or the playground, or the railings, or the modulars. And I don't think there's a whole lot of money left on those 5 projects.
Right.
So
There's a small amount still remaining
Right.
on the high school drainage project.
Right,
but
so
that's-
if we have, we have about from these numbers, about $750,000 that could be used of pre-current year money that could be used for tax relief next year.
Again, not to confuse the issue, but unreserved fund balance, we've always talked about being 3 elements. The underspend of the expenditure budget, over collection of the revenue budget, and then this third component, which is called fund balance. What we've reviewed with you, or tried to review with you, is where we stand currently with the fund balance number. The other 2 revenues and expenditures. We really won't know until early winter.
And just for giggles, we can't overspend without lots of hoops, so it doesn't get worse. 750 times .0681. So that's about 51 cents. Which takes care of the 570 we already voted for, plus this would be another 50 cents, 51 cents, maybe more. So you look at the 38.50, that's 88 cents, and that's the delta we were looking for. It's already been identified. And this is an anomaly. We don't see this a lot, but we did a lot of projects. And we did a lot of projects because we thought we had money. And we did have some money, but it wasn't as much, and we're just seeing this big bubble that's gonna hit us, but a lot of it's gonna come back next year, when the tax rate's done in October, according to these numbers.
Are you sure it's the 792? Because wouldn't
Yep.
it be the 1.1 minus the 570 that's going back?
No, the 570 came out of this number. Yes, it's both that, the 792 plus the 5, because it's already there. I've already taken out, because when we did the analysis, I already took the 38, 39 cents off the 83-cent delta, and then another 50 cents for that number, which takes all those projects we already approved and leaves them where they are. So the steel doors get replaced. The things we talked about that we thought were worthy.
The list that I read.
The list that you read, if we do believe they're worthy, it's 50 cents after funding those, and 38 cents for the 570 that we already voted for last Thursday, roughly. So we're talking, what, 89, 90 cents.
So that anticipated return would be before we see any overcollection of revenue for this current fiscal year, and it doesn't take into account if we had monies available as a function of controlling the spending of this current budget as well.
Correct. It still gets us back to what we thought, but it's still an increase. It was an increase because the default budget is greater than the previous year's budget. That's the new delta, if you want to think about that number. What we had presented to the folks at deliberative is what we can come up to, but unfortunately not this November, this October.
It's a hiccup for this time.
This is the hiccup.
Pretty decent hiccup.
Agreed.
Yep. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
That just gets me back to the budget.
Yeah, so I'm hearing the dollars and the tax rate impact of that. I'm still not sure I understand what we're talking about not doing.
Because we're not doing, how do I do it as a double negative to make it a positive? We're not doing anything. What we're doing is the big impact of all of this, we're returning the entire 2.5% that we thought we could hold for later time for emergencies. That's what's happening, is we won't have any reserves if something happens. It's going completely back to the tax rate. That's kind of like what we're committed to.
But what that would, if I may, Stephen, still allow us potentially to be able to do is if we committed to doing that, we finish the budget this evening knowing and anticipating a certain number of unreserved fund balance, because that helps offset the tax increase.
Yep.
That would then allow us, as we get into the March or April timeframe, to be able to evaluate if monies are available to repopulate that account.
That would be correct.
But it would be that we'd be committing to a larger return essentially now.
Yep, pretty much. So that's the impact. Roughly 570,000, 571,000, whatever it was. 318, 318.
So what's the risk of not having any emergency contingency fund? I mean, what would happen if we had another flood or something else unexpected.
Well, certainly if we had something that was catastrophic in nature, we have our property liability insurance umbrella. So we would have the ability to get insurance money for something that occurred. It's a bit of a risk in that some of the things that could potentially happen, not that we would anticipate any of these, but Mountain View Middle School has a very old septic system. At some point in time, we're gonna need to replace that septic system. I hope it's not within the next 7 or 8 months. That could be a potential thing. Any kind of roofing issues, any kind of a catastrophic heating failure. If we had a boiler fail at Glen Lake, they only have one boiler, that would be catastrophic. So any of those types of issues would be potentially concerning to us. But again, we have a big enough budget that we would freeze, you know, if we had to replace a boiler that we weren't anticipating, we would freeze accounts and we would stop spending so that we could make sure we could cover those expenses.
Similar to what we've done in the past. The 2.5% is relatively new, and I think we funded it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And used it for the flood program, the flood mitigation program.
And I think perspective-wise too, I mean, the 2.5% fund was set up with the permission of the voters, and it is designed to help us protect against emergencies. I mean, by definition, it's for emergency spending or for tax relief. And of course, the emergency, the DOE helps us define what that is because we need their permission and the budget committee's permission, if I'm not mistaken, to access
Correct.
it for those sorts of losses. But I, for one, given the situation we've just been experiencing for the last week and a half, am really glad we had some money put aside that we could at least try to get 39 cents off on the December bill. I was grateful for that. I wish that we were able to put aside as much as the town, because if we were, we could have, in one swoop, completely mitigated this situation, but we're not, and that's okay. We're working this through as best we can, but I'm grateful that we were able to have at least some money on hand to try to help us deal with this very unexpected turn of events. So what I'm hearing is if we do not put the brakes on any projects thus far that we had approved, it is your belief that we will have enough to be able to return at least to offset to make up the 83-cent delta. Just not in December, it would be for next June. I'm hearing that.
That's the numbers that Ray gave us at A&F tonight, yes.
Okay. Does that answer any questions anybody has? Anything else to add otherwise? Do we think that this is an appropriate vehicle to try to deal with what we've got thus far?
I like it.
Seems like it's the vehicle we have.
That's one way, and the other way we can do is look, we asked the superintendent if he can find out if we had to come in at default, what would it look like? What would we lose that's in our current mix if we wanted to go to the budget committee at the default level?
I know at our last meeting, we left at about 30,000 above default.
Right.
Not that any motions were made. We
Right.
actually did not make any
Nope.
changes. We talked numbers
Yep.
and thought about what that would look like, but we got within 30,000
Yep.
of default, give or take a couple,
And I think
couple dollars.
we lost the walls, the moving walls, we lost the rest of the books, oh, maybe the books already went.
They had already gone. Brian, do you wanna
Yeah.
run down the list, please?
Sure, the short version of the list, and Ray, are you,
We do have copies of that revised default that we can pass
Oh,
around.
thank you.
Okay. 48 down that way.
Is it on the
The
second page?
list that Dan may address with you is on the last page of this exhibit.
So on the very last page, the list that we had put before you last time was to eliminate the middle school wall room dividers, that was 70,000. High school AP testing, 16,000. Middle school computer lab replacement, 33,000. Middle school Columbine locks, 10,860. Middle school classroom furniture, 21,560. Maple Ave exterior doors, 7,000. So that list together essentially gets us to default. It would be a $164 difference.
Now, are the Columbine locks for the interior, what you're talking about, the interior doors, not the hallway doors, but between the classrooms?
We still have some remaining hallway doors to do as well, but that's what Gary, I think, has put in with for the grant. And there's no matching funds for this portion, so if we're lucky enough to get that money,
It's 100%.
yeah,
Cool.
if we get it.
But- And how much would that be of the 10,860?
Gary, how much did you put in for door locks in the grant? You did put,
You know, I think we need to have people, if they're answering, come to the mic. I'm not trying to be a pain, but it's just difficult for the record. Can you come to the mic here? Thanks.
I intend to put in the full amount in the grants, for the grant.
so it would be 10,860 for Mountain View.
So you're telling us that if you get the grant, this expenditure would not be necessary
Correct.
anyway?
What is the likelihood of getting the grant? Because that's kind of a
Yeah.
important thing, safety-wise, to have.
Okay, we'll know by the end of the year.
If,
End of
you-
the school year or calendar year?
No, a calendar year.
Okay. Dan?
in the hallway locks, not the interior locks, but the hallway locks, do you have any idea how much of the 10,860 those are?
I believe that's what we're talking about, because we haven't been able to identify the type of locks to use between classrooms,
Right, and I didn't wanna, so they're not even costed?
right?
Oh, okay,
Because we don't know what they are.
right. It's a double lock. It opens when they're in a fire alarm, but it doesn't if there's a perpetrator. And we don't know how the difference. There's like
And they don't
cameras all
exist.
over the place that's through the IP system. I'm being facetious, but no, this is so important. I would not like to remove it. That's,
I agree with Dan.
That's my thought too.
yeah. The safety, I know we've gone for it, but we got a broken desk. I mean, we can try to work with it, but, yeah.
So we've been talking for a long time about these locks between classrooms. And I know there doesn't seem to be an agreement, but we've been talking a long time. When will a decision be made so it can
We've
be
met
done?
with the fire and the police, and they really can't give us an answer.
Well, we have some new information. So to try to resolve this, Chief McDonald from New Boston put out this same question to every emergency management director in the state and got 0 responses because no one has figured this out. We went through and read the fire code very, very, very closely, and we believe we can put in some kind of a deadbolt system on the interior doors because there still is sufficient, when you have sprinklered buildings, there's a certain distance you have to have from leaving a classroom to a primary method of egress, and we're getting closer. So I wish I had an answer to this, and anyone who wants to invent this lock, I think it's a first-class ticket to being a millionaire, because no one has figured out how to build an interior lock that complies with both police and fire needs. But in looking at the code, we think we're gonna be able to do this because there are 2 egresses from all first-level classrooms. The second level classrooms, if you have a second floor building, some of those classrooms might have to have a different locking system, but all first floor, you can use the windows as a secondary, egress. So this has been ongoing. We've been talking about this for quite some time. We've tried to reach out to the state fire marshal. We've reached out to all the emergency management directors. We've reached out to lock companies. Randy and I half tinkered and came up with something that we thought we could actually bring to a metal fabricator and have built. So, I mean, we've been trying to figure this one out for a while.
Out of curiosity, remember the hotels sometimes had interior doors? It's gotta be a different scenario, but it's kinda like what we're thinking about. It's gotta be dead bolted from either side, and both sides have to be open in order for it to work. And the police or the fire wants it differently, where if you open up one side, there's a code to open up the other side too?
Fire wants the ability to get people out of that classroom. And so if you have
From the other
if you have
side.
two adjoining classrooms, if you have a door between those two classrooms, fire wants kids or whoever occupants to be able to go, away from a fire into another area. And police, for lockdown purposes, want to restrict access control, so not to allow, somebody to potentially get in and have access to the back of classrooms because those doors aren't secured.
Yeah.
And that's the struggle.
Jenny?
My other question is Maple Avenue exterior doors, are they safe doors, or can somebody kick those doors in?
I might ask Mrs. Pishka to come join us and speak to that, or Randy, or both. So I guess I would say this is a series of hard choices. We have tried to take care of our buildings. We've tried to put money into maintaining our facilities. It's important to remember these buildings are the most valuable asset the taxpayers of Goffstown own. So when we talk about the need to replace doors, they needed to be replaced 5 years ago. Suzanne?
Well, yes, that's right. There are a few that we have not completed. And being in New Hampshire with salt and sand, the bottoms are coming apart. And could someone kick them in?
No.
I don't think I could answer that. No, I would
No.
say that's not the problem. It's more of just the fact that they're, the framing is especially at the bottom, is eroding the metal.
They're safe, but the
Yeah.
issue that we have issues if you have like water issues or wind-driven issues where water can come under the door because you can't really properly attach sweeps to the bottom of the door to keep it out. You could have insects coming in the bottom of the door because you can't attach proper sweeps on the bottom because of the salt and the things that we use, that the metal gets thin, and it gets to a point where it's hard to attach anything to it. So we paint it, we putty it to seal it, but it comes to a point where you have to replace them. Whether it's, at the Maple Elementary School, or if it's in this building here, if you go and you look at the cafeteria doors, the gym doors, and you look at the hinges and the repairs that have been done over and over and over to the doors to keep them functioning, it gets to a point where you just can't work on them anymore. We've replaced hinges, full roton hinges or piano hinges, some folks call them. Some of the doors that, due to rough use, I'll say that, some doors have been split, we've patched them back together. We're at a point where these doors have to be replaced so that they operate properly. There are no electronic holds on them because they prop them open. The fire department wants them put onto magnets, so in a fire alarm that the doors release and they close. Just all of these things coming together, and the only way to achieve that is to do a proper door replacement and take them off and replace them, and that's where we're at right now.
Heather?
How many doors? Do you
I
know?
believe there were 8 sets of doors. This number that we're talking at here is from the gym, the small calf to the larger calf. And I believe it's 9 sets of doors.
This though, Randy, this is the budgeted amount that We have in the current proposed budget, this was for 7,000 for exterior doors from Maple.
Oh, that was, I was speaking globally beyond the 7, to be honest with you.
So what Randy was talking about was monies that I had mentioned earlier for door replacement. Two different.
Two different topics,
different
but the
pools.
same, but at the end of the day, this the same outcome.
So how many doors is the 7,000?
Is this two sets?
Two,
Two sets.
two sets.
Yeah, they're over 3,000 each.
So that-
Suzanne, if we do this, will this wrap it up? Will you be all set for doors?
It's only two of them.
Exterior doors?
No, right?
You know, the answer to that is no.
Because I
Really,
know,
at the end of the
like,
day,
every year we're like doing the doors, and I keep thinking that,
Well,
They
that
are-
part of
soon
that, and part of
we'll
that is
get them.
because we hadn't done doors in a long time, and there was a long period of time where doors have a shelf life. They get used and abused. They're, constantly being rough handled, particularly by high school and middle school kids, and the mechanisms fail. The hinges fail. They rust out at the bottom from salt use.
We came off, 7 years default? There are a lot of years that we weren't moving forward
6.
on any of these projects. So certainly, I wasn't trying to suggest it wasn't overdue, but I really thought maybe this was gonna be it, but no. Okay. Any other questions on this? Thanks, guys. Any other questions on this? Go ahead, Steve.
I'd like to hear a little bit more, just refresh my recollection on the Mountain View classroom furniture, because I remember there were a few different components, and some of it was the donated music risers, and they were sort of a safety issue, but others were tables and chairs and stools, and trying to figure out how much is, if we can separate that out a little bit, yeah, because the safety stuff is more of a concern for me.
Wendy?
Wendy, did you want to come
Can you
to
join us?
the table? I'm just looking at.
So the 21,000, I just want to make sure that I'm getting everything on the table. The 21,560, if you remember correctly, when I had presented, that line was zeroed out last year, so we were kind of looking to make up from the lost monies from the year prior. So we're looking to move away from having tablet desks in our 7th and 8th grade settings to more of a table setting for collaboration. We also were looking for new stools for our tech ed room. The stools that are in there now used to be in our computer lab, and when we got new computer lab chairs, we moved those down. So they're not great. I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of the backs are actually falling off the stools. So when you walk in the classroom, some have backs, some do not. Rehearsal chairs for chorus, those have been in the building since it opened. And then the current risers were a donation from a community chorus group about 7 years ago. And when they did donate those, they thought they were about 15 years old, but they didn't have exact documentation on when they purchased those. The risers, I do feel like, are a safety concern. We have more and more students who are getting into chorus. When you have a lot more kids on there, there's more weight. So if you're asking me what would be a priority, it would be the risers above everything else on that list.
And just for anybody who's having a hard time finding it, you'd find it in your budget on page 207. And it is itemized out there.
So the 6 risers, that would be your priority?
Yes,
for 5,000?
yes, yep.
And that's it?
That would be my biggest priority. I think, with our maintenance staff and things like that, we can help mend the stools for tech ed to make them last as long as we can. Though the tables would be great for collaboration, we can just continue to have the kids move the desks into collaborative circles. So, we're willing to work with that, but for safety reasons, I think the risers would be important.
Thank you. That was really
Thank you.
question, sorry. If we're done talking about furniture, the room dividers.
Mhm.
I know that is a safety issue, and there was 5 that needed to be replaced, so.
Yes.
Only an administrator and a custodian can open them, so
Right.
they're not really being utilized. If we can't do all, preference 1, 2, what is your thought? How big of a deal is this? I know we already had somebody hurt with it.
Mhm.
Frontline
Right.
was hurt
A-
again.
And when that happened, the entire administrative team and all of our maintenance staff were trained to properly open them. And I think because of how much we have moved them, the administrative team, we kind of know which ones are a little funkier to move than others. So there's one set in particular that are really hard to move just because they are moved quite often by a team that utilizes the double room. You know, the nice thing about getting new ones is they're remote control, so you don't have to put hands on. But do I think that that is a priority? I think that we can go another year, if you're asking me. I think we can go another year with just the administrative team and the custodial staff opening those up.
So replace them.
So, right, honestly, I think, you know, we look at each other's schedules and schedule in and out of meetings, and the teams are really great about telling us ahead of time if they need to have things moved so that we can create our schedules to make sure that we can get down there to help out. So we're willing to continue to do that.
Anybody else have a question for Wendy before she gets up?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
What were we just talking about? On those, the dividing doors that we're talking about, say this past summer, that our maintenance team took a look at those dividing doors, because they've been there for quite a while, and we took some of the ceiling tiles out and looked at the way that they were actually secured on the tracks that they were running, and seen that there were some maintenance issues to those tracks. So we made a lot of adjustments to those doors to make them easier to use, and a lot of the issues that they fought with trying to get these doors open and closed have been mitigated greatly by when we went in and we leveled those doors out, you know, and lubricated the slides on them to get them to move better. We've separated some of the panels so that instead of pulling 8 panels at a time, you're only pulling one section, which is a double panel, and then bringing them together that way. So I was saying there are things that we've done to try to help to minimize how hard it is for these to be used. But again, they do need to be replaced. But it's just, I just want you to understand that we're doing all that we can to keep them functioning and using, and taking the steps that we can to keep them functional until they are replaced.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody have anything else? Go ahead, Jack.
I had a question about the AP testing. I was just, missed last meeting. I was just wondering what sort of the idea was behind putting that. Is that because of the school offering to paying for them, or is that cutting AP testing entirely?
No, it was the school paying for students to take the test. So the board took the action of reducing the budgeted amount that was proposed, and it would be more of a needs-based scholarship type scenario.
So this would just be putting money into almost like a financial aid pool for kids that need help paying for AP testing?
Kind of.
The request was for 33,000, and we cut it down to 16, so we cut it in half. I don't know that we necessarily
It went down by 17.5.
specified, yeah. But it was a matter of just trying to make some wiggle room in some other situations that we had, or other priorities that we also wanted to make sure we funded.
I mean, these are all tough decisions, you know, when we're trying to, you know, we have a pretty frugal budget here. It's important for the board and the community at large to remember that in New Hampshire, you can actually compare cost per pupil across every single school district in the state. You can compare what does it cost to educate a kid in Merrimack or Moulton Borough or Madbury, and you can compare apples to apples. And when you look at the numbers for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, we are among the lowest per pupil cost in the entire state. And some would say that's something maybe we shouldn't be all that proud of. And educationally, I would agree with that. But the reality is we run an incredibly fiscally conservative school district. And when we're talking about replacing wall dividers that haven't worked for 15 or more years, that are 25 years old, and it took someone getting injured because we haven't had the money to pay to replace those. I mean, those are some of the tough examples that we have to make. And getting rid of locks, getting rid of exterior doors, these are all tough choices for the board to consider. A lot of competing agendas in a school system of our size.
Kim, I'm remembering, in your budget, I just can't find the budget line for AP testing. You had asked that if the line does get cut, that we please consider leaving X number of dollars in, the budget. Is my memory correct in saying that was 2,500?
Kim, you wanna join us?
Yeah, I see her looking at her budget. I've been flipping.
The AP testing is under the guidance line, which is going to be
Page 298.
2120.
298?
Yep. 212612.
Yes, and that is what they were hoping to keep, is a little under $3,000 to offset some of the adjustments that are happening at the state level. There used to be additional monies to offset some of the scholarship opportunities that were offered through the College Board, and we've seen a decrease in those in recent years. So looking to maintain some of that if we couldn't do the full testing for everybody, and it was about $2,500.
Thank you.
So here's an interesting question. Do we have any kind of consensus of what we're trying to do? Are we trying to come closer to a default to send to the budget committee? Or, because if we are, then I have a motion I'm prepared to make to get us closer. But I don't want to make the motion if we're not, have a consensus that we want to go there.
What do you guys wanna do?
I'm not really thrilled about taking out the locks, the doors, or the risers. I think we really need to think about safety.
Then you would be very pleased with my motion.
I'm ready to hear a motion.
You're ready to hear a motion? Is anybody, are we good? Well, what's your motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the room dividers for 70,000, reduce AP testing by 12 to bring it to a total of 4,000, reduce the computer lab by 33, and reduce the classroom furniture by 15,000 to leave 6,560 in it.
6,560?
Yes, if I did my math properly. And that's a total reduction of $130,000, which brings us within $28,420 of default, as calculated today.
What's the total reduction, I'm sorry?
130. And if we get a second, then we can probably debate that furniture number, because I'm not sure if I got all the way down to what Ginny was looking for.
Could you just repeat that motion again?
Yes. So, do you have page 2?
Yep.
Okay, so the 70,000 would go, AP testing would go to 4,000,
So it's minus 12 off of AP.
yep. 33,000 would go. The Columbine locks would completely stay there, I'm not looking at any of that. The classroom furniture I reduce to $6,560, that's only so I could throw 15,000 into the motion. And the 7,000 for the exterior doors would stay as well. So that's a total of 130, and as I said, I'm not sure if I got all the furniture, because the risers were 5,046. I left 6,560 in there, which leaves roughly $1,514 for the stools and the other things. The chairs that didn't have backs on them, and I don't know how many that takes it, but it's a start. It gets us talking.
So I have the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Lori. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Jack.
I would just like to ask why, the AP testing would be dropped down to 4,000. Is that just like just to get more money into other sections, or is there a greater reason?
And you'll have to talk louder for me, okay? I'm sorry. But I think what I heard you say was you're wondering why I brought it down to 4,000?
Yes.
I think I heard that we wanted a minimum of 2,500, right?
Yes.
And so I put more in there than what the minimum is, because large choices, if I have to choose between Columbine locks and AP testing, it's the Columbine locks. If we are looking at the tax rate, we're looking at the budget as it goes forward, and we're saying, okay, what's more likely to pass when we get there? And if we get closer to default, are we there? If default happens, then more stuff is gonna go. And what's that gonna be a pick? Then we're gonna have to make hard decisions. That's really where I came from. And the testing is a new expense, not an old one. That was my reasoning.
I'm still just a bit confused on it. So the money that we'd be putting towards this is just going to a need-based financial, correct?
Kids
And-
can still take the tests, just
Yes.
like they
Oh,
currently
right.
do.
Yeah.
It's just, it would continue to be at family expense.
Okay.
And it could be something that we could direct administration, not only a needs-based, and depending on what the draw on those funds for, it could be merit-based too. I mean, nothing's set in stone at the moment, because I don't think we have any kind of policy based on that. It's not a lot of money.
You know, I mean, the board
4,000,
isn't
yeah.
directing how,
Right.
what criteria admin uses to disperse it, but they would need to use some criteria to determine how they would disperse the funds. Jenny, did you have something to add? No, okay.
I had a quick
Go
question.
ahead, Janelle.
If we do get the grant for the Columbine locks, what would we do at that point? Would we return that to the taxpayers, or would that go back towards some of these costs? I'm just curious.
Realistically, we have so many locks that we need to do, we would probably still just keep moving forward on the lock project. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of lock replacements. We have not been able to sufficiently tackle some of the interior locks here at the high school, et cetera. So this is a multi-year, you will see this again and again for years to come. It's gonna take us some time to finish this.
Any other additional questions pertaining to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion? We're unanimous, thank you.
if there isn't any further discussion on further reductions or additions, I'm prepared to make a motion to request this be sent to the Budget Committee.
Where are we at?
The delta right now from default is $28,584.
Go ahead, Heather.
Does that include the fields and the stipends?
Yes.
That includes
The,
that?
the two 15s that we
I know
did
we were
last week,
moving
we didn't,
stuff around, but I
we
just
didn't
wanna
touch
make
those at
sure.
all.
Okay.
Those are still.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
well,
funded.
those had been added by motion.
Right.
Well, they were
two meetings
replaced.
ago.
Yeah, they were replaced,
Right.
Just
in
wanna
all
make sure.
essence.
But I wanted to make sure they were aware that we
Yep.
had moved and
Right, move
voted
those
Yep.
stuff
and
around.
approved
Right,
to alter the budget in that way
okay,
already.
right. Just wanna make sure I have all my
All your
information.
ducks in a row.
All my ducks here.
Are we content? Are we at peace? This is the budget we want to send forward? Does anyone have anything else to add?
So with this default, do we have a roundabout what the tax rate would be? Just
We do.
estimate?
We do. So if the budget was actually at default, and a couple of different scenarios, I'm gonna go with the most optimistic one because the information that Dan had shared from A and F sounded like an unreserved fund balance somewhere in the $700,000,
$750 plus
somewhere in
minus.
that. A default budget, so this is gonna be slightly different because it's $28,000 higher.
Right.
With a $700,000 unreserved fund balance would give us a tax rate of $15.18. So that's still an increase.
Right.
So the current rate is 1502, depending on what happens with the hearing with the Department of Revenue Administration. If the tax rate goes down to 1463, it would be a jump from 1463 up to approximately 1518 or so.
And that's produced from, because there's so many components of it. Can I throw out a number rather than a tax rate as well to give us a little idea? The increase on the appropriation side for the default is roughly $777,579. And so right now, we have, without looking at what happens with the 17-18 budget, a rough wash with the unencumbered funds. It's kind of, that's taken care of, if you think about it. And if you look at what we might do, and that's in the effect, so let's just say that's a wash. So what we're still dealing with is the current difference would be the net 30-something cents, because we had an 83 cents minus what we just did for the 570. So that delta needs to be made up, if we want it, with unexpended for the current year, plus over-anticipated revenues over estimated revenues. Which traditionally is been minimum of 300,000 and goes upwards from there if we don't do any other projects. So that would be roughly another 20 cents and working our way up. So the normal increase would have been another 50 or 60, or the traditional would be somewhere between 40 and 60 cents. We are within that delta going forward with a default and the money being returned. At least in my brain doing the calculation right now.
I am concerned with the 700,000 number in the event that something happens that we are unable to return the 700. that's a problem. If we're going to make a promise, I want to keep the promise.
Okay, let's talk about that. What could possibly happen to that 750 since it's prior period and has been reserved for specific projects? Those specific projects have to have some kind of errant behavior. And most of them are already done. The drainage program is done. The MAES playground is done. The Mountain View railing is done. That represents over 400,000 of that 750. So that's money that's already kind of, there's a little thing to be done. I guess there was one little thing to be done left on the drainage project. We have to flush the pipe or
Here at
push
the
the
high
pipe.
school, it's already been done. I don't think we've had final billing on that, though.
Okay, and so
But that
I'm
was
not sure.
within budget.
That's,
That was-
that
yeah.
whole, this whole project has been.
Right.
Within budget, and we carried a, part of this money is we carried a contingency in case, you know, you hit extra ledge, you ran into, you know, anytime you dig in the ground, something bad can happen. So we carried extra monies in case we had overages, which we didn't have, luckily, and again, working with,
We had about $100,000.
working with a great contractor.
So we don't have a choice with that money. We can't vote to do anything with that money, because that's prior period votes and money carried forward.
Right, I'm thinking of this year's money.
We haven't even talked about this year's money yet. That's the unknown, and that's that 300,000 I was thinking of, where we normally underspend by at least 100. We could underspend by much more than that if we had to, and we have been traditionally conservative in the estimated revenue from New Boston. What's the rate of attendance at New Boston over our projected revenues?
It's up slightly for this year, but not nearly as dramatically as it was the year before.
So,
The
okay.
year prior, we had about 33 unanticipated New
Yeah,
Boston
that's a lot.
students that ended up really being a significant drain on the New Boston school budget. But for Goffstown, that was the better part of $400,000 of revenue that we did not anticipate because the enrollment numbers went through the roof.
Right, and so if we say, you know, even revenues were there, we're just talking about monitoring our current 17-18 expenditures.
And we are very conservative on projecting revenues.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up getting yourself in a situation where you're anticipating more revenue than you actually get, which creates another budget shortfall,
Yeah.
which is a major problem.
And tonight's work is pretty much our baseline to send it to the budget committee, and if something happens and we find out additional information about something, we can always send it to Diane, and Diane can bring it to the budget committee, and it's their budget that goes before the taxpayers.
So it's still a working document.
Yep.
So. Just want to make sure we've got a good handle for when we're ready for next Tuesday. And we want to have a good handle anyway.
Mhm.
Moving forward, that is the best way to proceed. Are we at peace? Is this a budget that we can live with? Is this a budget we think cares for the educational needs of our kids? Is this a budget that helps move our district forward?
Boy, those are all tough questions.
They are.
And I'm not sure I can answer those in the affirmative, but I think if we said, is this a budget that we could live with sending to the budget committee and standing it behind it and say, you know, for our scraping to the bones budget, we could get it done with this because we have the taxpayers in mind, we also have the children in mind and the education and the safety. We can get her done. We got a lot of good people.
Anybody else?
I think going back to Brian's point about whether this is, you know, having such a low rate is something to be proud of, or, you know, maybe we ought to be looking at that. I think over the years, I think right now we're just dealing with the situation, but, you know, what is the vision, you know, in the long run? You know, is it enough?
You know, and I appreciate that question. I think we have tried to focus on enhancing what we do. We've added new programs. I think about things like curriculum updates that we've been able to do, adding programs like robotics, looking at a lot of the safety enhancements. I mean, we are moving forward. We are still moving forward. We'd like to maybe move forward a little more quickly, but I think this is a fair, prudent way for us to continue to make progress, albeit slow progress, but still allowing us. But, I mean, clearly, there are sacrifices, and I think this budget, I think coming in 28,000 over default is probably a good place to be.
Anything else? Do we have a motion, something?
I'd like to make a motion, we put forward the budget, I don't have the exact number, so if we can do the math. The total budget of 41,955,671 plus the delta of the 20, well, whatever the number is, okay? So, that we talked about tonight. Would that work? As a funny,
So
total
Budget as
non-descriptive.
amended tonight,
So
I
Yes.
think sounds like a more,
It was default plus 28,584,
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
right?
yes.
So that should be, Ray, double check the math
Yeah.
here,
No,
please.
I had 28,
41 million,
28,420.
that's what I had, 28,420.
That's what I have.
420, not 584?
No,
Right.
420.
Let me do it again.
And it's just not the general fund. Make sure we also have to have the special revenue fund and the food service fund added to that.
Right.
Okay.
Total operating budget.
Yeah.
What'd you come up with, Ray?
We have $40,442,620
That looks low.
That does look low.
for that's the general fund.
Right.
You're working off of the total operating budget?
Yes, because that's what's gonna go to the budget committee.
955,671 plus. How about $41,984,091?
Is that what you have, Brian?
It is.
Okay.
41,984,
41984,091.
94,091.
So if you look at Ray's big sheet,
This one?
this long sheet,
Plus the 28.
the default number is on the bottom right-hand side.
41,955.
See where it says 41,955,671?
Oh, so I got
That's
a
his
different number.
default calculation.
Oh, because
So where we got this number was we took that number,
I
the
took it
default
off.
budget, and added
So
28,420.
if I take this and I reduce it by 130, then we can do the both sides. Got it. Let me do that. And we will put an actual number to the motion.
I would like that.
Me too. So if we took what Ray had and we subtract 130,000 and come from it from the other side, we should get something that explodes my calculator. Why is it doing that? 41,984, 091?
55.
Yep. So Dan, we're looking for 41,984,091.
That's,
Denise, did you capture that on the motion?
I did.
Thank you. So I have a motion, do I have a second? Lori? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
We're unanimous, thank you. So this budget will be prepared for presentation, delivery to the budget committee, not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday.
So you have tomorrow off.
Yes.
That's good.
So in other business that may legally come before the meeting, we just do have one personnel nomination.
We
It's a
do,
teacher.
and thank you for letting us walk this in. We have a nomination for Brianna Knoll as a special education teacher at Goffstown High School. She is coming to us as a Step 5 master's teacher who has been teaching in the Midwest, somewhere in the Chicago area. And she's the replacement for Betsy Lake.
Do you have any questions?
Would this be immediate replacement or as of the next school year?
It would be
No.
immediate.
Any other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Go ahead, Retta.
I make a motion to, accept the nomination, I don't know the teacher's name.
Brianna Knoll.
Brianna Knoll, as recommended.
I have a motion, do I have a second? By Heather, all in favor?
Aye.
We're unanimous, thank you. Do we have non-public tonight? Do we have non-public?
Nope.
All right, we don't have non-public, so that means motion to adjourn. By Lori, seconded by Heather, all in favor?
Aye.